Good evening. I'd now like to convene the meeting of the Planning and Development Committee of Monday, March 13th.
Fast, right?
Let's see, and could you take roll? Thank you.
Councilmember Wynn? Councilmember Nusma?
Here.
Chair Kelly? Here. Councilmember Burns?
Here.
Councilmember Ravel?
Here.
Councilmember Reed? Councilmember Karkaris?
Here.
Thank you. Now, would somebody like to move approval of the minutes?
Second.
Okay, minutes have been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
No objections? Okay, the minutes have passed. We'll now go to public comment. All right, we'll start with in-person. Thank you. Okay, our first, well, how many, it depends how many people we have, right? I mean, we don't,
24, so each has 2 minutes.
it's 45 minutes, I thought, so it'd be 3, right?
No, they have a maximum of 2 minutes.
Okay, it's 2 minutes a person, and we're beginning with Roberta Hudson. Roberta Hudson? Oh, okay.
Good evening. My name is Roberta Hudson, and I'm speaking tonight against the ordinance 26, I believe, for 1801 Church Street. 25 years ago, I started the Foster Park Neighbors Association. It was a block club that started in my block, and we ended up with several block clubs joining us because we were concerned about the things that were taking place in our communities. We met for every month at Fleetwood Jourdain, as many as 40-some people at the meetings a month for over 20-some years. And our concern now is that, again, you're putting in place programs that will benefit not our children and their future, but you're benefiting people who live in Winnetka, Northbrook, and other places. We submitted a plan to the city for a West Side plan for a program that was pulled together. The state's attorney's office let us have use of one of their staff. We conducted a survey of the community, over 400 and some residents, community residents, indicated what they wanted to see happening in their community and for their use in the process. And what they wanted was a skills center to train our youth in the skills that they would need to become productive citizens. And also, they wanted to make sure that our kids would have training in the latest technologies. This has not happened after over 25 years. And again, an opportunity to put something at Church and Durrell that would benefit our children is being overlooked again. I mean, when are you going to stop benefiting people from Winnetka, Northbrook, and not benefiting our children? I mean, after 25 years, you would think something would take place. And we're just fed up with it. And it looks like it doesn't matter that the community comes before you to indicate what their interest is, you just ignore it. It's been over 25 years, it's been ignored, and it's continuing to be that way. I am saying this in disgust. I'm really in disgust. After this many years of working with the community, trying to improve and make things better in the community, and working in the community, spending dollars to improve the community, and then you do things to benefit Winnetka residents or Northbrook, but not our children. I'm disgusted.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson. Next, we have Ms. Tina Payton.
Tina Payton. First of all, I don't even know what this is. We've never seen this. And we have some very serious problems. Here we are again talking about another high-rise, low-income, affordable building in the 5th Ward. What about the 1st Ward? What about the 7th Ward? How about the 6th Ward? How about the 3rd Ward? Don't put it there. Put it next to the Albion. How about that? Why do we have to keep taking affordable housing? And you can't say that I'm against affordable housing because I'm a provider. This man was provided $4 million by the city of Evanston for a project that's not even passed yet. Somebody needs to go to jail. This is outrageous. We have objected, and you you do not listen to us. Oh, yes, we hear what you're saying, and then you sit up here and vote how you want to, regardless of all these people sitting here getting ready to speak to you. It's outrageous, and you will pay at the end. Here it is. The church was denied in a committee. Now, you're planning on donating $1 million property to the church, and if the church can't get built, then this man's project over here is planning on taking a church project. 2 minutes for us to speak on 2 projects, which we never saw this before, is outrageous. You don't listen to the community, and everybody in the city of Evanston needs to stand up once again, regardless of retaliation. The city retaliates against me for many years, but you need to stop this right now.
Thank you, Ms. Payton. Next, we have Xiomara Chambers. Next will be Anna, is it Woods? And then Haley Guillaume.
Hello, I'm here at the ordinance on Church Street. On behalf of the residents of the 5th Ward, I'm requesting councilman members Bobby Burns and Devon Rees recuse themselves from the vote regarding HODC's application for the property to be built on Church and Darrow. Both council members Burns and Reed have received funds for personal use via Connections for the Homeless, and Connection for the Homeless has a pecuniary interest in the work that HODC completes. HODC has a long history of working primarily with Connections of the Homeless. In other words, in many instances, including here, Connections of the Homeless is the sole organization whose clients may be provided housing in certain HODC properties. There's a clear and consistent evidence of Connection for the Homeless placing their clients in HODC buildings, and of HODC only being willing to work with Connections for the Homeless to fill their buildings. There are lengthy examples of Connections for the Homeless lobbying on behalf of HODC. A copy of the flyer demonstrating the connection between HODC and Connections for the Homeless was sent via email to all council members on March 10, 2023. Additionally, upper management for Connections for the Homeless has attended all of the community meetings to date in support of HODC, despite the fact none of them upper management lives in Evanston. Therefore, it is unacceptable that Councilman Member Burns and Reed vote on any item relating to the HODC application for any future projects that Connects for the Homeless undertakes. Devon Reed and Bobby Burns must recuse themselves from this project in addition to any other project in an identity that Connections for the Homeless lobbies and works with. We also request that Councilman Member Bobby Burns step aside entirely from this project and a separate committee be established to examine and investigate the process behind this application and the future plans for management involving Connections for the Homeless. Let me make something very clear. We're not against affordable housing. What we are against is segregation and redlining, which is illegal and is now being modernized in the form of housing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
My neighbors will speak about how this will impact our taxes, which are already too high considering I back up against a transfer station which overwhelms our sewer system, floods us with rats, fills our yards daily with trash, and shakes the foundations of our houses. Not to mention the sound and noise. Sandwiched between the dump and this proposal would tank my housing value and raise my taxes. Many will speak on the traffic. A real concern is exiting and entering Darrow from Church or Emerson is tricky, and I've personally almost been hit there many times. Cars swing wide into the bike lane and almost hit pedestrians and children when people are passing. I want to speak about how this housing is really going to help its residents. Affordable housing is a wonderful tool to help people, gets them on their feet. Some proposals are better than others, and we have to pick the best option. This building has no green space, nowhere to enjoy the outdoors. The units and rooms are tiny in order to fit the large number of units into a relatively small parcel of land. It is run by a company that has many unhappy residents in its other projects and has not proven to run the smaller projects effectively. Why would we want it to scale up? Why can't this one be any smaller? The ground is toxic. It cannot have housing on it. That's why there's a big old land swap. But why have we not seen any proof that 20 feet to the west is suddenly entirely safe? We know the air quality near the transfer station isn't good. They're working on it, apparently, but we have no update on when it will be declared clean. As the Land Use Commission, someone for the project stated facts about how the Fifth Ward residents have lower median income and a shorter life expectancy than other wards, which begs the question, why here? The Fifth Ward does not, as of yet, have a school. It is located a mile, this location is located a mile to a drugstore, a mile to the grocery store, which is Valley, which is fairly expensive, and a mile to the L. Families in the area need a car. They likely need two. My biggest concern, however, is increased penalties that people in this building would face if a crime were ever committed. The location's near a school within the bounds of a so-called drug-free zone. The maximum term of incarceration can potentially be doubled in this area. In Illinois, committing certain drug-related crimes within 1,000 feet of a school increases the charge to a Class X felony, the most severe charge in Illinois state courts. If convicted, prison time is mandatory. Gun possession without a license moves from a misdemeanor to a felony. This feels like a trap. Thanks.
Okay, next, Haley. Did you want to show the slides now or at the end, or?
Whichever is your preference, or the council member's preference.
Okay, I think now is fine. Is that?
Sure.
Does that work? Okay, great.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. Haley Guyan representing Crosby Theater LLC. We have raised objections at the Land Use Commission level, and we continue to raise those here in front of the committee. Our objections relate to our status as a historic landmark. We'd like to take the opportunity to explain to the committee and give them more information about this building and its history. We think it's pertinent to the decision in front of you. We want to make sure you have all of the information at your disposal and in order to make that decision and recommendation to City Council. The request presented for the committee is, of course, that this decision, P1, items P2 and P3 on the agenda be referred to the Historic Preservation Commission for its input and expertise. There are licensed architects on that committee, in that commission. There are experts far above my education level and experience in this matter, as no disrespect, but as well as each of you. We should leverage that expertise and make it part of the decision. So they can provide the information that we have yet to get from HODC, despite our best efforts. Referring this matter to the Historic Preservation Commission is supported by precedent. Northwestern University had previously had to submit a development at Chicago and Davis that adjoined a historic landmark that was reviewed by the Historic Preservation Commission. So this request is reasonable and supported by precedent. We would, again, frankly, we don't think you have all the information in front of you to make a decision this evening without the Historic Preservation Commission's input. 1817 Church Street has unique architectural characteristics. It's colonial revival building in the style of French Second Empire, built in 1925. Construction is masonry, and it was established as a historic landmark in 1996. In Evanston, there are 10 unique criteria to be afforded this historic landmark designation. I'll also direct staff, you can just sort of run the PowerPoint. I'd like the committee members to see sort of the history and then note the unique considerations of this property as they relate to stormwater management. We've elucidated those concerns in the record as well as through our written testimony. This verbal testimony supplants that, but we do want you to see for yourself what we've experienced and what the owners of the building have put forth a great deal of effort, resources, time, dedication, commitment to Evanston to preserve this property. So as I was saying, the building in Evanston, to meet historic landmark, you need to, the standard is such that its identification as the work of an architect, designer, engineer, or building whose individual work is significant in the history or development of the city of Evanston, the state of Illinois, the Midwest region, or the United States. This property was designed by architect Benedict J. Burns, a significant Chicago architect who designed residential, religious, and commercial buildings and contributed to the historic districts both in Chicago and surrounding suburbs. The architecture, his architecture in Evanston includes Chicago bungalows, 2025 Lawndale Avenue, 1020 Seward Street, and 2412 Lincolnwood Drive. Another standard for historic landmark is to have the building's identification with a person who significantly contributed to the historic, cultural, architectural, or archaeological or related aspect of the city of Evanston, state of Illinois, Midwest region, or the United States. We enjoy that, and we are proud of that as well. We are associated with Dr. J.V. LaCroix, original owner of 1817 Church Street. It was the founding location for the North Shore Animal Hospital, and originally this is where Dr. LaCroix began his veterinary career and established his animal hospital here. So we are proud of that history, and we take note of it. We have that picture framed in our office as out of respect for that history. I guess what I want to emphasize is the HODC development will imperil this historic building, right? The evidence presented to us thus far have been lackluster. We have not gotten soil boring samples, environmental report, geotechnical reports. These are things that the Historic Preservation Commission, we hope, would have the teeth to at least require HODC to submit. Again, it's up to that commission to take into account the unique considerations of the properties and of our property's integrity, both as a legal stakeholder and as an architect, a historic landmark. They also issue certificates of appropriateness, and so that is an element that's mandatory before a permit can be issued. So those are the mechanisms of that. I want to be respectful of the commission's time, so I will just close by highlighting again that I want to make sure you have all the information before recommending this to City Council. Without the Historic Preservation Commission's input, we would believe that any decision would run afoul of the Historic Preservation Ordinance, which establishes that in order to carry out its purpose, the Commission must review major zoning variations, including those requested by applicants here, as a result of their impact on historic landmarks. 1817 is an adjoining property to this proposed development. We would ask that that step be taken prior to any further movement out of this committee and certainly to City Council. I have other comments on the developments generally, but I guess I want to be respectful of other folks' time, so I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Nambi Chambers, followed by Priscilla Giles, sorry.
Hello. Starbucks closed their doors whenever the high school students are not there. Kids will be going to this unsupervised building to hang out. The school is only 265 feet away from the proposed building. Fifth Ward already has a lot of problem: crimes, drugs. Putting 190 low-income family beside the high school is only setting them up to fail. HODC does not have a track record that's acceptable to this community. They have many trouble building, included 319 Dempster Street, from dead bodies to drugs and multiple crime. Within 2 years, there were 288 calls to the police for this location. HODC job is to build buildings and not care about who lives in it for as long as their pockets are getting filled.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Next, Ms. Giles.
Thank you. I didn't object to a church, but I am disappointed that the Promise Training Center is not on the table. Shortly before the pandemic, I visited the birthplace of my maternal grandmother in Newellton, Louisiana, a town, not a city, that was too poor to support a high school, a library, a police station, or even a fire department. No supermarket. Yet it provided single-story family housing, similar to the veterans' housing in Evanston after World War II. I object to a 5-story building at Darrow and Church. The same brick type of building can be built at Darrow and Church for Evanston's poor with Evanston's wealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Suvankar Dasgupta, followed by Kenya Reza, and then Todd Smith.
Good evening. I'm coming from a background of a parent. My kid every day goes to the schools, high school, going to the same crossing. The amount of traffic it's already have, it's mammoth traffic. And the incidents and the road safety is already a big issue. On top of that, having 44 new families on the same area with a very limited parking facilities. Also the commercials without any parking facilities, that will add on more chaos, more road safety issue on that area. There's really a parent's concern on that corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenya Reza, or Risa?
Good evening, everyone. I'm here today to talk about the importance of families and several factors that make it or break it. The very first and most important factor that impacts a family is home stability, or lack thereof. What impacts a child's life is home life. I found affordable housing can help provide just that, stability. It can mean that a mother can send her children to the same school year after year so they can develop long-lasting friendships that mothers can find a community for support. Which brings me to the second factor, education. Affordable housing can also help in this area by providing access to high-quality, low poverty schools. Again, high quality, low poverty schools, where children can have access to programs that help them improve their future. Learn a different language, learn to play an instrument, learn other wonderful cultures, or develop love for the arts. Environment is another big one that can lead to poor lifelong health if it's not a good one. Affordable housing can mean easy access to transportation and food sources like a grocery store. Sadly, the Fifth Ward cannot offer any of those things to their existing community. We do not have yet a homeschool, we don't have easy access to transportation, and we don't have a grocery store, nor a clean environment. The land this building would be constructed on is a health hazard. Affordable housing is important, but ladies and gentlemen, let's serve our community first. This building does not guarantee priority to Evanstonians. How can we justify the development of a building if it's not serving our community, but rather adding a burden to it? Let's fix our existing issues first. Please vote no to the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Todd Smith.
Good evening, Council. I'm here for denouncing this building. I'm all for affordable housing. My family and I have been providing affordable housing in Evanston for over 70 years. This is going to put a lot of pressure on landlords in the immediate area. So we talk about keeping people in the area. This is going to force a lot of landlords out of the area because they cannot compete against these prices that are being provided from affordable housing, right? In addition, some of the things they're talking about letting Section 8 go into that resident and charging them lesser rate, no. I talked to Section 8, and they have fixed number of pricing that they will standardize on. Never mind if it's an affordable housing place or not. So for a 3-bedroom, they have a fixed price. For a 2-bedroom, they have a fixed price. They will be paying a lot more than the numbers that are being stated, right? Some of the other issues I have with this is the land is contaminated. The land has never been cleaned up. You're going to take and put people on this land, right, that we know it is contaminated. In addition, we've had air studies done some time ago across from the dump site there where the air quality is poor. Why do you want to take this and put this in the Fifth Ward also, right? There's all these other wards out here. Put it somewhere else. We're all for affordable housing, but we want scattered site housing, and we want something where people have ownership. Take some of that $450,000 they're getting per unit and figure out how you can give that money or apply that money for something they have ownership. Because if we give them ownership, they'll take better care and be more involved in the community. That's what we want. So we are all for affordable housing. We just want it done a certain way, and we don't believe this is the right way. There are many other issues, and I've just hit on a few of those. But things like the traffic area, right? The traffic, the parking, there are several issues. 16 overrides needed to put this building in, right? 14 or 16 overrides needed. So I'm just pointing out there's huge numbers here that we have to look at. You have to look at this from multiple angles. This cannot be addressed from a single angle. That's pretty much it. I'll head. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Raditza Suits.
Hi. I testified 3 times, and I'm going to try to be as quick as possible to address all the issues. I have a small 4-flat building. I provide affordable housing. I take Section 8. I take working poor people. I have taken a building that was nothing but a blight in the neighborhood and turned it into something nice for people. So when I came to this neighborhood, for decades, we were plagued with violence, with shooting, with loitering, with crimes, with prostitution. We had police officers on speed dial. We can call them by names. We can call Officer Tanya Noble so she can come here and testify. She told me that she cried when she read a letter from my husband, or what we had to go through in this neighborhood. We are overwhelmed with affordable housing. I testified. I was much younger. I was naive. I believed in something better. and I didn't know exactly what I was doing. But here I am. I don't know why God put me in this neighborhood at this time, but maybe there is some bigger reason behind it. So we cannot rent. It takes us months to rent our units, months to rent our units. This is not neighborhood that's by the lake that everything goes quickly. We cannot rent it for the prices that they're renting it by the lake. We have more than enough affordable units in this neighborhood. One aspect of it. Second aspect that I'm just going to mention quickly. Does anyone care about lives of police officers? Are they what? Are they collateral damage? Are their lives worthless? We're putting 44 parking places underground with no surveillance, nothing. That's a crime scene and a death trap. I'm asking everybody to please think about those people who have served us for over 20 years. And then the last, but the most important thing is we have to talk about the numbers. We are all for affordable housing. I am a Bernie Sanders supporter. I am here, I've done my part. But what is represented in front of us, that's not what it is. Let's follow the numbers. We are in the midst of the national controversy that so many senators in this country are calling for these programs to be abolished because the money does not serve people that it intends to serve. It's ending up someplace in the pockets in the middle. So we have $23 million, $22 million of taxpayers' money, my money, your money, everybody else's money. We know how much the units in Evanston cost, how much units in Fifth Ward cost. Let's start from about $100,000, $110,000 per unit, $120,000, $130,000. So simple math, $23 million, how many units can we have? 120, 130, right? So what are we talking about? Then how is it possible that anyone can come to the city of Evanston and ask for a gift of $4 million and $1 million lot with no financial disclosure? How is it possible? So is Evanston just giving gifts of $5 million? What are the requirements? What are the requirements? You have to be tall and slim? Is that it? Or maybe have few friends within the city? I worked for many small theater groups, and if we asked for a little money, we had to prove how much we had and what we're going to do with that money and how we're going to spend that money. And here we have $23 million, no accountability. Also, HODC is effectively taking rents from approximately 460 units, right? Paid by taxpayers. They don't need new roofs. They don't need new plumbing. They don't need new electricity. They're just taking the cream. They're taking the rents. How much? $4 million, $5 million, $3 million? Does anyone have an idea? What has been done with that money? How much of that money has gone back into the pot to help the people that they claim they're helping? Does anyone think that we in Fifth Ward are imbeciles, morons, retards, that we don't have brain to think? Thank you for your time.
Next we have, thank you, Mr. Carlos Sutton.
Good evening, the members of the Planning and Development Committee. I'm requesting that you, one, recuse both aldermen from the 5th and the 8th Ward because of their compliance and non-compliance with the developers in a way that will adversely affect our community. First, I've lived in this block for 73 years and have afforded affordable housing to many people. Unfortunately, the people that came from connections were never supported in a way. You'll have this same problem with putting this high density on such a low space. Tonight, you will discuss and vote on a development that has not complied with the city's regulations. It was passed by the Land Use Commission, which disregarded our concerns and their issues. Any development requesting 14 variants at the current zoning, which is now business and commercial, to residential, must follow the rules. 1, publication and notification to stakeholders, which was not done. Secondly, when we discuss the best practices from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, they always stress scattered sites and low density. The current proposal by HODC violates not only the intent of HUD, but also the 7 considerations that this commission was supposed to use for granting 14 variants. Out of the 7 requirements, this proposal did not satisfy 5. But on the other hand, one neighbor wanted 3 variances, and 2 of the neighbors came and asked, and they were granted. They were denied their variances, 3, because 2 people from the neighborhood came. Look at us. This is Evanston, the 5th Ward. We are what you propose to be. We're diverse economically, we're diverse racially, and we're concerned about our property and our quality of life. How dare you sit there and pass judgment on us when many of you have no affordable housing in your wards? How dare you sit there and pass judgment on us when you know darn well that this is a project that is dead on arrival? And I end with the quote of my favorite prophet, Michael Jackson. All I want to say is you don't really care about us.
I'm sorry, who is it? Andrew Fuderman?
Good evening. My name is Andrew Futterman. I live at 1738 Darrow Avenue, and I rise today to voice my opposition to this Church Street project. I was especially proud to live in this community when on October 26, 2022, Mayor Biss wrote to the citizens of Evanston emphasizing the town's commitment to environmental justice, a topic that I, as an attorney for the United States Environmental Protection Agency, hold near to my heart. To paraphrase Mayor Biss, he wrote, "We achieve environmental justice when every resident is equally protected from environmental hazards and health risks, including polluted air and water. The ugly but perhaps unsurprising truth is that the opposite has too often been the case, and that unless we work proactively and with complete knowledge, environmental injustice is likely to persist." This sentiment is something that I agree with entirely, and is something that I have dedicated my life to advancing. But it's also why I was so shocked when I first heard about this project. How could a town that is so committed to ensuring environmental justice be making the same mistakes and committing the same environmental injustices as before? The project is proposed on a lot that in the 1960s was a gas station. Gas stations store fuel in underground tanks, which are notorious for depositing hazardous pollutants into the soils. So I submitted a FOIA request to the state, and sure enough, though those tanks have been removed, the chemicals that were leaking for 30 or 40 years remain. Benzene, ethylbenzene, toluene, xylene, and lead, all extremely dangerous chemicals, all present at this site. How much money has Evanston spent to remove lead service pipelines, only to turn around and place affordable housing on a lot contaminated with lead? It does not make sense to me. This site is also just a block from the Evanston Transfer Station, a facility with known air pollution issues that regularly operates in violation of its permit. At last month's Land Use Committee meeting, a woman from Connections for the Homeless noted that people of the 5th Ward die younger than other Evanstonians. She used this as support for this project and said that we need affordable housing. But I fail to understand how this project will do anything but make that problem worse and ensure an early grave for the would-be tenants. I want to make it clear I am for affordable housing, and I am for affordable housing in my neighborhood. But to situate affordable housing on a lot contaminated with hazardous chemicals down the street from a facility with known air pollution issues is exactly the sort of injustices that I thought Mayor Biss, this council, and this community stood out against. People need affordable housing, but we also need clean air, clean water, and a clean environment in which to live. Those two ideas are not in contention. Don't make them be. This is the wrong lot, this is the wrong project, and this is the wrong organization to do business with. I urge you all to recognize, just because someone is poor does not mean that they deserve less, that they deserve to live in an environment that will all but ensure an early grave. We can do better. We must do better. I urge you all to vote no and to end this modernized redlining. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody online who'd like to speak who has not signed up?
I signed up to speak.
Okay, Ms. Cannon?
Yes, that is. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Kelly. My name is Darlene Cannon. I'm a Second Ward resident. I stand in solidarity with the residents of the Second and Fifth Ward with concerns about the HODC building. Residents are concerned about the lack of notification and communication between them and the city about the development. Residents are concerned about the density, and given that they are already burdened with the waste transfer station and the volume of traffic from ETHS, how much more are they expected to take? This building is not in alignment with surrounding property, and there seems to be an ongoing trend of not providing setback in green space for low-income families. It's as if the mindset is that they don't deserve green space. This project, as it's being presented, doesn't follow the Fifth Ward plan that was created by residents of the Fifth Ward, and people will have a negative reaction or an objection if they are not included in decisions that are impacting their lives. These residents, nor am I, are against affordable housing, but we are against segregated housing and, as it's been previously said, against modernized redlining. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Just please state your name.
My name is Cesar Flores. I'm here to speak to what happened inside these affordable houses. My wife has lived in such a projects. She remembers her and 4 of her members' family plus another 5 in a studio apartment. We asked how is HODC going to make sure this does not going to happen at this building, putting an added burden to the community. They have no management proposal. How is this safety going to be kept for the children you plan serve? Which brings to me to environmental piece. It was a gas station feet away from a garbage transfer site. Is any of this worry about this key problem? Also, this community didn't get the proper notice from this development. Feels like they want us to be on our backs. And I'm not the only one staying in this. As the people here today, little to no notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in person or in line who would like to comment? Okay, so that concludes public comment. Would somebody like to move our first item for consideration, item P1?
I'll move P1, ordinance 26023, granting special use permit to allow outdoor storage and open sales.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
So I've spoken with staff about this, and it's basically codifying some of the changes to the outdoor storage at Home Depot, just moving it around the corner from, currently our zoning does not allow for them to have anything really out in front of the store, so this will allow them to basically be in compliance, and also they've also agreed to like move some of their storage of rental vehicles to the side lot. So I've talked to residents about this, and it's not a big deal to them. I think it's just making sure that they're in compliance with what they're currently doing with their like garden storage and outdoor stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, no other comments? Okay, with that, I think we'll just do a voice call. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No objections? Okay, item P1 passes with unanimous support. Would somebody like to move item P2?
So moved. I'll second.
Second.
Okay, item P2, ordinance 34023, approving a special use with major variations for a religious institution at 1801 to 1805 Church Street has been moved and seconded. We'll now open this up for discussion. I'm the only one that has questions. Okay, so I guess if we could have, I have some concerns that were brought up that I guess I would like answered regarding, for example, the environmental concerns.
Which one's about the soil on site?
Well, from the former gas station, and what is impacted? I know we have two entities here. We have the church and we have the affordable housing. If someone could address the concerns brought up regarding, if that doesn't apply to this item, then I'd like to know.
No, it does, because I think that's where they'll end up on the corner lot. So, Director Flax, if you want to speak to it, I can, but you probably should.
I can speak to the corner lot. The city had acquired that through the no cash bid program. It was a former gas station. Our corporate counsel at the time got cleanup demanded by the gasoline provider, the gas station. I think it was Citgo, but I can't honestly remember, that was responsible for it. The property was cleaned up through the Illinois Environmental Protection voluntary sign up for the cleanup, which gets a no further remediation letter when the proposed cleanup method is undertaken and approved and is confirmed by the Environmental Protection Agency. That letter, the NFR, has been provided, and that was part of what was provided along with the discussion of having the site redeveloped.
Thank you. I guess I was concerned because the attorney Futterman mentioned that they did FOIA the IEPA and that there were issues with leaking, or no?
I mean, my understanding of, and I've mentioned this before, is the way these projects work is if there's any contaminated soil, they'll be required to remove it from the property before it is developed, and that's common practice with all similar developments.
There is an impermeable barrier over one portion of the lot. That portion of the lot will not be affected in the development. If the impermeable barrier were, if the project needed to go deeper into the soil, then Councilmember Burns is correct. Then that would be removed. Additional soil would be taken out, and a new impermeable barrier would be put at a lower level. But the church's foundation and other parts of it do not break that barrier.
Thank you. Are you presenting this evening? When it comes to your project, how about for the church? Do we have a presentation, or is anybody going to speak to this, or do we have slides?
I mean, I'd say if we can work off of questions first. I mean, if y'all want to present.
Speak to this item if you would like to.
Oh, yeah.
So there currently is an engineered barrier, as was mentioned there.
Could you introduce yourself for the record, please?
My name is Matt Kidd. I'm with Suzuki Kidd Architects, the architects for the church project. So there is an engineered barrier there currently, and most likely that engineered barrier will need to be removed to build the footings, the foundation for the church. So when we do remove that that engineered barrier, we will be removing soil, and then we'll also have to put a new engineered barrier back in place.
And, I mean, do we not have the boring tests? Are there, I just understood from one of the presentations that the community was waiting for some results from testing.
There's no tests currently on the soil conditions right now, no. From the letter we have from the city stating there's no further remediation, that's what we're going off from right now. And then as we move forward, we will have engineered soil samples of that and to determine how much soil needs to be taken out, and that is just the next step.
Is there anything that precludes you from doing that ahead of time so that we can have the results and know what we're talking about in terms of contamination?
Well,
I mean, is there any reason that?
There's certainly contaminated soil still under there. That's a known fact. That's the engineered barriers there in place. So there is contaminated soil underneath that engineered barrier.
But we just don't know how contaminated, correct? We don't know the degree of contamination, the extent of it.
Correct.
We do. No, we don't, right? So we don't really know what, I'm sorry. Okay, if we have, I mean, so you have results from the state with regard to contamination, okay? I think that's pertinent.
If the plan is to leave it there without any, especially without applying any barrier, which they're talking about, then yeah. I think the point which you may have missed is that if it sounds like the current engineering barrier would need to be removed, and then the soil would need to be removed, a certain portion of the soil would need to be removed, and then a barrier put back in place. I believe all of this is, I don't know if this particular project would need a letter from the EPA.
Yes, correct. Once this is all complete, there'll be another EPA letter.
I just want to be clear, as much as I understand, why we're here and why this is being, is a concern, but this is something that is common with many projects, and which is why there's a process to deal with it, which is why the EPA has to sign off on it. I mean, this is something that will be addressed. And then also to another environmental issue, if you're talking about air quality, I also have a letter from the EPA. So I'll speak to that if you want me to as well. But this is a process that is pretty covered,
Right, I think it's just to understand going forward, because obviously there's a certain amount of, construction and understanding what the community potentials for being exposed to. I think that's why there's just, it seems to me it would be.
What I would rather be interested in is how do you make sure that people are safe, right? What is the engineering barrier for? Why are you removing the soil? Why are you taking those measures? And how does it ensure that people are safe on this site once it's developed?
Actually, the area that marked by yellow, that is the area that EPA has capped. But what's happened was that EPA just placed the retardant on the top and then put some kind of cap in the concrete on the top of it. So we were at the site during last summer, and we were told that maybe water has been precipitated underneath, so we really need to require to have another testing. So that's the condition we were given. So after that,
Yes, so again, there's an existing barrier there. We are going to be removing that barrier, removing the soil, testing the soil, and removing the contaminated soil. And then there'll be another engineered barrier, and we'll be working with consultants on this to design that engineered barrier to meet EPA standards. And so after the project is complete, there'll be another letter stating, that the correct engineered barrier is in place. So that's the procedure. We understand that there's contaminated soils. We're not claiming that there's not. And so this is actually a benefit to the community that the church is looking to actually occupy the site, take care of the soils, which currently, if we just leave it a vacant lot, those soils are still there. They're contaminated, and the groundwater, it's not that soil, the contaminants are moving underneath that engineered barrier, and we're aware of that. And so by taking those soils out, we're removing those contaminants from that site. So I think it's a huge benefit, really, to the community that we're actually taking those contaminants away from the site.
And sorry, my English is not the native, so I'm kind of adding at that it's the idea that we just don't know, we cannot grasp how much has been contaminated. But we're told that the tree to the corner has been pretty much damaged, maybe due to that contaminant. But what we are trying to do is that we are replacing all those contaminated soil due to the process of construction. We have to dig the ground to ensure that there's a certain depth, 3.5 feet for the first line, and all those things that have to be met. So we are digging the contaminated land, soil, and replacing them with fresh, uncontaminated soil. And not only for that, we are creating some kind of retardant to make sure, not only for the top, but all the side, so that there's going to be no water running through and discharging without knowing. So that's what we are trying to do. And if you look at the detail with your engineer, they would really understand. We also extended that precaution all the way to the public sidewalk so that the tree is not going to get contaminated.
I guess I would just like to know, is there any reason you said you're required to do another testing that can't be done now? I think it's just helpful, I would think as a resident, just to know, what is going to be involved with regard to creating the retardant and everything, because we don't know yet until you test. We don't really know the process that's going to be required.
We have to work together with environmental engineer who actually submitted the first one to EPA. And then, just like Matt tried to explain, that we're going to go through the same procedure that we have to check the soil and then due process, we're going to receive some letter. We're going to be receiving the letter. Yeah. We're going to be receiving the letter that approved. Entire process has been somehow implemented correctly. Then we can receive the letter from the authority.
Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to address concerns regarding drainage that were raised by the historic building next door. I'm not sure if this is the church property or what will be the church property or the current church property where the large underground tank is proposed. But I just want to make sure that appropriate engineering measures are being planned to minimize the drainage concerns of the neighbors.
I think the main concern was for the other building. There is going to be an underwater storage vault at this location as well. That will be located on the north side of the property. Our civil engineers have already looked at that, and they have sized that appropriately and had discussion with the city engineer as far as the size of that underwater storage vault as well as where that water will be discharged into the stormwater system.
Is that something that MWRD will have to permit?
Correct, yes.
So it meets it will,
yes.
MWRD requirements?
Yes, it will meet them.
Okay, great. And Madam Chair, I would prefer not to vote on the church until we've had the discussion about the HODC property, so I'm not sure how we handle that procedurally. So
That's fine.
if I could offer a suggestion, perhaps we, for now, conclude our discussion on the church, table it just for a few minutes to have the discussion on the HODC property.
Could I just ask one little follow-up question about
Yes.
the stormwater, though?
When we're ready. I'm not suggesting right now.
Sure, okay. And this is just from the memo, so it may be not quite accurate description. It says the underground vault will provide stormwater management with stormwater release to the alley, which I thought sounded problematic.
To the system in the alley. That's where the
To
pipe
the
is.
sewer, to the-
Yes,
okay.
correct. Yeah, and that'll be finalized as we move through the process, whether
Right.
it goes into the alley or into the Darrow.
Right, okay, because I had visions of it sort of spewing into the alley.
In addition to that, in the alley, we do have existing stormwater line, 8 inches pipe. And along the Darrow Avenue, we have 15 inches. And our primary interest were to discharge to that 15 inches one. But the city engineer somehow suggested to discharge to 8 inches. So we did the calculation, and we have a 3,049 cubic foot of the retention vault. And then we're going to be discharging that one. Can you read this?
Yeah, it's roughly 0.07 foot acres for the vault.
Right, exactly. And then we are releasing rate per code by City of Evanston, that's 0.15 cubic foot per second. So we're trying to meet with all the criteria right now at this moment.
If there's no further discussion, then yeah, I would prefer that we table this for a few minutes until after we've had the opportunity to discuss item P3.
Would someone like to second that table?
Second.
Okay, so do I need to get a vote on that?
Can't hurt.
Okay. All right. Can I, Alderman Nguyen? Nusma?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, so we'll move on now to discussion item, if someone would like to move item P3, and then we'll circle back.
Madam Chair, I'll move item P3, ordinance 35-0-23, approving major variations for the construction of a new 5-story mixed-use building at 1811 through 1815 Church Street.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Actually want to hear, I talked to Councilmember Newsome about this, but would love to hear from, I guess, Councilmember Ravel, because I haven't talked to you yet, just about what some of your concerns are. Not to put you on the spot, but I've had a chance to check in with pretty much everybody else.
Well, just, there's been a lot of mention this evening about the traffic and the congestion that currently exists on Church Street and the intersection with Dodge, and difficulty for cars on Darrow merging onto Church Street. So I was wondering, was a traffic study done as part of the?
Yes, there's a traffic study that was done as part of the, it's part in the packet. Everyone should have a copy of that. I don't know if that was included.
The packet was huge.
Most of that packet was the traffic study.
Oh,
Most of the hugeness
okay.
was actually that study.
Do you want to just summarize real briefly how?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to answer.
Right, yeah, just how the traffic study addressed some of the concerns that were raised this evening by some of the community members.
Right. So the traffic study did analyze the amount of traffic. It did talk about the current traffic patterns and said the conclusion was that based on adding additional units to that block, it wouldn't change the current situation. The situation is what it is right now, and so having the additional units, we have talked about, is there a way that we can improve the traffic flow and with the way that the parking is coming out of the alley? If there's a way to talk with the city engineers about whether there's an impact, if we should turn left, should we turn right, is there a better way to flow out of the back of the alley? So that's something that we can, whatever would be beneficial, the city would be happy to discuss that.
When did you conduct those studies? And
So Kimley Horn did that study. I believe it was, I'm not right, it was January of 2022 was when the study was conducted.
Thank you. So I think that point is taken, that there was reduced attendance at school. And Councilmember Burns.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if Laura Biggs is is in person or with us remotely. But I think especially along, Church Street, somewhat Dodge too, but Church Street, a more direct way to address some of the traffic congestion issues is by addressing the issues that I'll call it the bump out caused, which I believe that bump out is there kind of on the southeast side of the street to make the bus stop more pedestrian friendly. And in putting that in place, it's removed turning lanes. And so in order I talked to one of our engineers and also our chief bureau engineer about this, it's taken away some turning lanes. And so what happens, as an example, if you're going eastbound down Church Street, trying to make a left, let's say, on Dodge, going north, everybody has to wait on you until you make that turn. And so I talked to, one of our engineers, Laura Biggs, to see if we're already planning to address this issue that we know not only businesses in the area have expressed, but also community members who live in the area. And this is something that will be taken up during the Mason Park expansion project. They are not to the point where they know exactly how they want to address it. Is it going to be eliminating the bump out so we can bring back those turning lanes? Will it be, some other measure? But they are going to start community engagement around that project in the next few weeks, next month. And so I think that more directly addresses the issue of traffic circulation issues around the area.
And I did have a couple of other areas to ask about. So I think there's some question about on-site management or on-site resident, an HODC representative living on site. Could you address that, how that's going to be handled?
Sure, yes. So with this development, what we've proposed through the financing, because the financing includes government funding, and so all the units need to be affordable to households below certain income levels. What we've requested is that one of the units is designated as a management unit, and so that we could have somebody living on site that would be the eyes and ears of the organization, who's there and available and able to take care of issues when they arise. So that's built into the current plan.
Okay. And what are the other kinds of regulations about how you can use the low-income housing tax credits? Because there's a lot of suggestion that we could just use that money to purchase a variety of scattered site houses.
So the funding is very project specific, so it has to be specifically applied to this project. When we make the application to the state, the financing is specifically for this project, for this development, for this configuration, for all those pieces that are included. And so it's not fungible, it can't be moved to other sites, it can't be applied to other, if the project goes away, the funding goes away. So it's an all or nothing proposition that we have to get all the financing to build the whole thing, we can't just get part of the financing. Part of the long-term requirements for using that government money responsible is that we have to rent the units to households that income qualify, and the technical is 60% of area median income based on the household size. If you're interested, we can go through some of those numbers, what they look like, but also that those rents have to be below market. And that has to be for a period of at least 30 years. As a nonprofit organization, of course, our goal is to keep the affordable housing affordable in perpetuity, so we have to follow those rules for those 30 years, so it's that oversight of making sure that we do follow all those rules throughout that time period.
And do you have to report annually to some entity about?
At least annually, yes. Okay. So every organization that would put funding in would have reporting requirements. So the state, if they're putting funding in, they're going to have annual reporting, annual inspections, annual compliance that we have to follow, as well as because of the investment mechanism, they're also going to be looking over our shoulders. Any funds that we put in, the city puts funds in, they'll be looking over our shoulders. So there's many organizations that are involved with compliance and reporting and making sure that we follow all those rules and the building is run that way it's supposed to be.
Okay. I listened to many hours of the Land Use Commission hearing. You mentioned at one point something about applying for permission to have an Evanston preference. Could you talk about that?
Correct. So current federal housing laws do not allow a local preference. You can imagine in some areas having a local preference would keep that area the way that is and exclude certain people. So current federal housing laws don't allow that. we have explicitly applied to allow a preference from Evanston residents. We specifically asked for that, and it's our goal to be able to achieve that so that we can move Evanston residents to the top of the list. What happens is that when somebody applies, it's usually on a first come, first served basis. And if you have that preference, what happens is people that apply later that meet that preference get jumped ahead of people that otherwise that don't meet that preference. And so the idea is that Evanston residents would have that preference and would be moved to the top of the list. So we're hoping to get that permission.
And so when will we know whether that's been accepted?
It's part of the overall financing structure that the state has to make that designation for us. And they haven't done that yet. But we've explicitly applied to have that allowed.
And they do make that kind of accommodation?
We hope so, yeah. That's the intention, that's the goal.
Okay. And then somewhere there was a mention about reserves.
Correct.
As part of the 22 million or something includes reserves. What is that?
Right, so the long-term upkeep of the building is important, of course. We have to do repairs, so there's sort of routine maintenance throughout the day. Through routine maintenance, things get clogged, things get broken, those get fixed. In addition, over the long haul, things need to be replaced. The boiler needs to be replaced, the roof needs to be replaced, windows, all those things need to be replaced long-term. And so in order to give us a jump start on those long-term things that will eventually need to be fixed, reserves are set aside up front on day one. So those reserves are capitalized up front, and then every year that reserve is added to. So part of the rental that's collected, those reserves are added to that. So that got a chunk to start with, and then that's added each year, and then that's used to make sure that those reserves are there long-term to be able to replace those items.
Okay. And, I think that's it for the moment.
Councilmember Newsma?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just checked through our packet here, and this is just a note to staff. I don't think the traffic study's in our packet. The word traffic is mentioned 195 times over 1,056 pages, but I don't think the traffic study's in there. So if and when this moves forward, just a request to staff to make sure that we do get a copy of that traffic study at some point. But moving beyond the question of traffic and congestion, which, one way or the other, is a solvable problem with appropriate measures, and perhaps dealing with the bump out that Councilmember Burns mentioned is kind of the most straightforward solution there. I'd like to talk about the size of the building and specifically a concern about the building height, knowing that 15, almost 20 years ago now, a smaller building was proposed and permission was denied. Now we're talking about a bigger building. Is there any possibility of making this building smaller and still making it work?
So, because I talked to Councilmember Newsom, I told you I just wanted to make sure Councilmember Ravel had an opportunity to speak.
Happy to turn that over to you, sir.
So I've been working with Richard the last few weeks to, Chair, could you please?
So, I'm sorry, is that something that we need to address, the recusal? I don't know. Attorney could, okay, I'll call for order for a moment. I guess I need clarification then from the attorney regarding the recusal that's being, can you address that?
Alexandra Ruggie, Deputy City Attorney. Thank you, Chair. I believe there's a recusal being asked for Council Members Burns and Reed. Looking at the city's ethics ordinance, that it would be up to the council member to recuse themselves if they believe a conflict exists. But based on what was said, I don't believe that the council member has a conflict in this instance. But
Okay.
it is up to the council member.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilmember Burns?
So I've been in conversation with Richard the past few weeks to see if what would happen if we took the building down to 47 feet, which is kind of right around what the kind of intent of the current zoning would allow for. It says 47 feet or 3 stories, I believe, and it's kind of funky because I don't think 3 stories and 47 feet really, there's a conflict there. I think it really would come down to about 45 feet, but the current zoning says 47 feet or 3 stories, I think is the wording. So we think 47 feet better complies with the intent of the current zoning. And currently, I believe it's 57 feet. My recommendation is we bring it down to 47 feet. What I wanted to make sure of is that we wouldn't lose any of the 3 bedrooms, which are really important. We had in our revenue sharing, TIF revenue sharing discussion with District 65, we heard a lot even from District 65 that we need more housing for families. And I've even heard from many of the people in this room who oppose this project, who criticize the inclusionary housing units downtown because of their small size. We've only been able to achieve one bedrooms and studio apartments, and so there is a path to do it. The hesitancy was Richard needed to reach back out to IDA, who had already approved the LIHTC funding, to make sure that they would be supportive of this change, and he can speak, about for what he heard. But basically, the new unit composition would be 11 3-bedrooms, 10 2-bedrooms, and then 12 1-bedrooms.
Can you repeat that slowly, please?
Yeah, sorry about
I think
that.
this
Hold
would
on.
have to go back through Land Use Commission.
It would not.
right?
No, I checked.
Wait, that's a whole different.
I mean, you can have Liz is here, can speak to it, but I was told it would not have to.
Okay, well, can you repeat to us what it is? I mean,
yeah,
this
so
doesn't
it's
seem
12
like the proper way to be doing this, but go ahead.
12 1-bedrooms,
Yeah,
10 2-bedrooms, and 11 3-bedrooms.
okay.
And the parking would remain the same, I believe, a one-to-one with a little bit of parking spaces to spare for visitors, et cetera. And then we would need to, I think we take down 2 feet from the commercial. I think it's at 15 feet right now. That would be 13 feet. And then I think that's it. I think that's pretty much all the changes. But we keep the same amount of 3 bedrooms. The retail is still there, and the parking is still kind of a one-to-one parking. So they wouldn't need a variance for parking.
So the total is 33 units then?
Correct, yeah.
Thank you.
I think it was 44, right? Yeah.
Councilmember Hadakaris?
Councilmember Burns just answered my question about the units.
So are you saying there would no longer be any variances?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there'll be a variance. Liz, if you're going to explain this better than I can, so if you could explain it. But the current zoning says 47 feet. It mentions 47 feet, but it also mentions 3 stories. And so I think this complies with the intent.
Good evening, Liz Williams, Planning and Zoning Manager. So Councilmember Burns is asking what the West Evanston overlay allows for height. It does allow 47 feet or 3 stories, and then in the overlay there are, maximum and minimum height requirements per floor. So, the code contemplates both in terms of 3 stories or 47 feet. So it's just the math doesn't always equal out to 47 feet to his point, depending upon how tall the stories they are proposing.
Thank you. But so variances but there would be variances still applied for here?
Correct in terms of the number of stories that are being proposed, yes. Because the variation would be because the code requires either 3 stories or 47 feet. So it would be the variation of the 3-story requirement. Because my understanding is is it proposed to be 4?
No, they're saying what we're proposing now is it would be 4 stories. Yeah, 4 stories, but 47
okay.
feet.
That's what
yeah.
I didn't understand.
Correct.
So I thought it would be 3. Okay. So, I'm sorry, does someone else want to comment? So, yeah, I mean, I need to see that. I can't vote on something without seeing the new plan. I mean, it doesn't seem to me that we should be voting on something and we don't see a new proposal. I mean, I think that does sound preferable, 4 stories instead of 5 stories, certainly. But I don't think that would be responsible to vote on something without seeing the new revised plan. It's my opinion.
I think it's the same. It looks exactly the same, just, what is it, shave 10 feet off the top. We lose, I think, 11 affordable units or so. So I'm still prepared to support this. It's in line with, I think, what we've heard from some community members about wanting a lower density. We've achieved that. Chair, if you can control, please.
Mr. Kenny, could you explain why the traffic wouldn't change according to your study? I'm just trying to understand that when you add 44 units, why there's no change in the traffic.
So adding units will add traffic because people have cars. What the traffic study says is that based on the traffic flow and how people go to work at different times, go to school at different times, leave the building at different times, not all 44 units or 33 units would be leaving at the exact same time, which would, of course, create an impact. It's because people leave at different times and they come back at different times. So because it's one car here, one car there, what happens is, per the traffic flow, it says it changes a couple of seconds. When that car is there, that's the additional increase in the amount of traffic that would be generated because of the development.
But it would be a change, certainly.
It would increase because there are more cars, but what the traffic study says is it does not increase significantly. It increases by matters of seconds, which is, per traffic study language, not a significant change.
Okay, because I'm sorry, I thought you said there would be no change. So there would be some change, certainly, to the traffic pattern.
Right, there's traffic changes all the time. You're adding more units, so yes.
Right,
clearly
there'd be
it's
more
going to
congestion. The congestion will increase.
And per the traffic studies, that's not a significant amount.
In addition, as I said, I think, again, a more direct way to address the issue, which we'll see how many seconds that gets us back, but is to address either the bump out or the issues created by that bump out. I think that we're going to see, I think supporting that work is going to result in an improved traffic circulation in the area much more than, preventing this project from moving forward, which is why when I heard that concern in the community, I always tell people, I know I have a good sense of what's happening where I am, but I really expect or benefit from the community telling me what the concerns are there. So we've heard several people talk about issues about traffic circulation in the area. I immediately met, I think within that same week or the next week, because that was on a Friday when I met with them in the church. I met with them and was appreciated the fact that staff was already looking at this based on a lot of feedback it's gotten from the business community, but also residents. So I think we'll address this in the Mesa Park expansion work.
Okay. And I am very concerned about the landmark building right next to it because it is adjoining. I feel very concerned that I would like to have this assessed. I mean, the Preservation Commission does review plan developments that affect proposed or designated landmarks, and certainly this is going to affect. I mean, I don't think we can dispute that, and I have great respect for our boards, committees, and commissions and their expertise. I would like to hear their assessment. They can't vote it up or down, but they certainly could provide us guidance to minimize any undermining of the integrity of the historic building, which is a very beautiful building on Church Street. I think I would very much like them to weigh in. Again, they wouldn't have the authority to vote it up or down, but they certainly have the authority to either make some recommendations or suggestions or considerations for us as council members to take into account. So I absolutely would like to see that happen.
So if I can quickly respond to that, because it's not in my understanding is because it's not in a historic district, because it is, the subject property is not the landmark property, that's something that would be a better fit to address kind of your request, is to create a consideration as a condition, which I'll read. So I got this from Liz also, our planning manager, planning and zoning division manager. The applicant shall work with the Preservation Commission prior to demolition to review the construction management plan, photo documentation of existing conditions, and a report issued by a certified structural engineer that documents measures taken to ensure the proposed construction activities will not have a structural impact on the landmark building at 1817 Church Street. So Liz, if you want to say anything else about this, but basically we can approve that as a condition, and this is something that is in line with what the preservation does on similar projects, and so wanted to provide that.
Thank you, but I just want to make it very clear that the statement of purpose for the Preservation Commission is to review plan developments that affect proposed or designated landmarks. And this isn't just across the street. I mean, this is, butts up directly against it. So this will absolutely affect it. And that this is under their purview. This is their domain. This is the statement of purpose. I, as well as seeing, a plan of a whole new plan with reduced, I can't move forward on this without having the new proposal as well. I would also like the Preservation Commission's review and recommendations and considerations that we should keep in mind. Thank you. Councilmember Newsma?
Thank you. It's the Historic Preservation Commission. It's not the Structural Integrity Commission. So I don't see a reason to refer this to historic preservation if the concern is structural integrity. I think there are other mechanisms in place for that. We had the same concern on Main Street with the Vogue project and the building next door, 0 inches setback, with an eye doctor in the building who had sensitive instruments that she was concerned about, survived the pile driving process. So engineering will enable this to happen. I'm not concerned about that issue.
Thank you. Councilmember Nguyen?
Yes, Jonathan just said what I was about to say, which is that the Preservation Commission doesn't have a yay or nay say over this. What they're going to advise is how to protect the building while it's being, how to protect the historic building while the new building is being built. And that's actually the language that Councilmember Burns was just reading, that happens in many instances where we have historic buildings or buildings in a landmark district and that need to be protected while other construction is going on nearby. And that language is, or something similar, has been used many times. Yeah. And I mean, this historic building has had many lives while I have been here on this council. There was, I don't remember how long ago, it was proposed to be a Black History Center, probably 10 or 15 years ago. So it's a beautiful old building, but it certainly can be protected, just like many other older buildings are protected all the time here in Evanston with good construction management. So I don't see that it needs to go back to the Preservation Commission.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Councilmember Revelle?
In addition to sort of making sure that as the construction happens, the demolition and the construction happens, the historic building is safe. I would also like to highlight the concern about the stormwater management because the historic buildings had a lot of flooding issues, and so just making sure that that's something that we're really going to be, taking a close look at, so that.
I think there's a misunderstanding about what the Preservation Commission's entire mission is. It is not just about the structure, whether the building will fall down or not. It's about design and how it works with landmark buildings, and if it were in a historic district, how it blends in there. And so it's more than whether or not the building will fall down. It's also they are experts with regard to historic buildings. They may offer, these are architects that know far more than we do, that may offer some suggestions in terms of making that building work better, even visually and aesthetically, on that block. And I think I, for one, absolutely would like their opinion on this. I would like their suggestions on ways perhaps they'll come up with something that we would never occur to us that would make that work better with the historic landmark building there. So it's not just about the Preservation Commission, is not about whether a building will stand or not, that type of integrity. I also have, I absolutely would like the Preservation Commission's input on this. I would also, I've heard a lot of people are very concerned about the amount of affordable housing that we have in this part of town. And I feel like I really need to see how scattered our affordable housing is. I would like to see a map of this. I hear this loud and clear, and I understand this concern, and we should all be concerned about this. We all want affordable housing, but sometimes maybe it's about doing fewer affordable units in another part of town rather than doing a lot where because the land is cheaper. So I feel like I also can't vote on this until I really see, have as part of the presentation a map of our scattered housing, whether it's clustered, how scattered it is, before I can make a decision. I've heard loud and clear from residents. I've heard about this for a long time. This isn't new. So I respect that concern, and I think we should all be concerned about that. I think we're not looking to further sort of deepen segregation in Evanston. So those are my concerns. I can't right now support this without information. I'm really happy to hear that the building will come down in height, but that would be to me irresponsible not to have that go back. This is still a variation, significant variation. It's a significant change. Other developments have to come back when they have such a significant change. I'm not sure why we wouldn't expect this project to come back. Councilmember Nguyen?
I believe that a project has to go back if it is significantly changed, or meaning larger or different. This is actually smaller, and so it is within the envelope of what was approved, and so it doesn't have to go back.
Oh, I would disagree. I can't decide. I'm supposed to say I don't like a 5-story building, but now I'm supposed to say this one's fine, but I can't see it. I can't see the plan. I can't visualize it. That to me is not accurate.
Let's apply common sense here.
Yeah.
I mean, the Land Use Commission heard this 3 times and spent, 12, 15 hours. They approved it up to 5 stories or recommended approval, I should say, up to 5 stories and 57.7 feet. Why would we go back to them and say, hey, spend another 12 hours to tell us exactly what we know they're going to say?
I mean, the reality is whether it's required or not. My understanding is not required. To the what was stated before about affordable housing, I agree, and I hope this same group that's here today supports the comprehensive planning process, and make sure, Chair, can you please? That's what.
Okay.
I think the comp plan is a wonderful place to ensure that that the zoning around the community supports affordable housing, supports higher density across the community. I think that's something that I 100% support, and I think this body does. So that's the place to address that. But somehow to say, I've heard people refer to this as dumping this in the community, and then my question was, are you saying that the tenants are trash? Or I don't understand what we're saying. This is a good thing for the community. There's a lot of double talk. I think one of the Chair, can you please? Can you please?
Order, please.
Thank you. I think some of the double talk I hear is that, and you hear this around, especially in the African American community, where they say, we want to make sure that we can preserve not just affordability generally in Evanston, but in the 5th Ward in particular, because a school was just approved there. And one of the concerns I hear is that people believe that the only reason why the district has approved the school is because there's more white people that live in the neighborhood. That is something that I've repeatedly heard. And so why wouldn't we want to find any and all opportunities to make Evanston more livable in the area where the school is going? Again, a lot of double talk. So again, I think this is the right project. My concern, I think this was shared with the community. Obviously, they would like some community members would like something that's smaller, but I think we've taken it down 10 feet. As Richard said earlier, I think they've learned from past challenges, which is why from the beginning they decided to take one of the units offline, so that no matter the income of the individual, they can get the right person, likely a maintenance person, to be in the building, to be the eyes and ears and to address any kind of concerns that happen. I think in addition to that, and Richard we've talked about this. I don't know if you have a final answer on it, but the potential to get a property manager on site. HODC has an increasing amount of units that they manage and maintain and own in Evanston specifically. And so another idea that I had is, why not it might be the right time to have a property manager headquartered at this site, and they can work kind of at all the other properties in Evanston. And I don't know if you're prepared I know you were going to talk to staff on whether or not that made some sense to do it, or whether or not you could do it, but I know you said it made sense.
Yeah, we proposed already to have a manager's office located in the building, and we anticipate that the manager would come there, work with tenants, and interact with them. But yeah, like you said, based on a number of units that we have in Evanston, at our other properties, we do have sort of a central core where that's the main office they work out of. They then can reach all the other offices from there. Building this and designing that office into this building makes a lot of sense for us to have that as the core of our Evanston operations.
So we have the unit that's taken offline for likely a maintenance person. We have an office that property manager can work out of. I've also heard concerns about green space, and I kind of joked with one of the neighbors at a meeting. I was like, Mason Park isn't big enough. I mean, Mason Park is a stone throw away from this site. I think I would agree in some cases if this was like some remote area, but the Fifth Ward is pretty good in that there's a decent amount of open green space, in particular in this area, a stone throws away at Mason Park. And then we also have a lot along the Channel Trail as well. So I think the community members that will live here will have their fair share of open green space, which is a great thing. And then again, the traffic congestion was another issue, and so I tried to figure out at the root what is creating the traffic congestion issues, not the perception, but at the root what is causing it, which is what I identified earlier. Which is why I continue to say I think by addressing that issue, we'll have a much greater impact on traffic circulation in the area. That's all for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Newsma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to ask about the ground floor retail spaces. Have you had any conversations with prospective tenants? What kind of tenants are you looking for there in the ground floor retail?
We have not spent much time on that. We haven't done much outreach because we don't know exactly the nature of the spaces. People have offered suggestions. We're really open to ideas. We're looking for community businesses, looking for businesses that would be accepted by the community, be interested, and be used by the community. But I just don't have anything moved far enough along to discuss at this point.
And the rent would be market rent?
It would not necessarily be market rent. We'd have to work out a deal that's going to be below market rent, I would assume, in the retail space too. We want a business that would be successful. We could do a training center if that's possible. If there's a group that wants to run and operate that's something that's been brought up many times. Or childcare or bakery or we would love to do something that made sense there, but it's a new area for us. We would be interested in trying to be something that would really be an asset, but just aren't far enough along with that discussion.
You mentioned bakery. So bakery would be a possibility, a restaurant?
It would probably be small for a sit-down restaurant. Councilmember Burns had mentioned that very early on, but something that could bring in food. There's a group, I believe, that is looking for a home for doing cooking for food, for groups that go out and have the food carts, and something like that would be a really, really interesting opportunity.
So the building design does include the black iron required?
We would need to make sure to design that part in, yeah.
Okay,
but now's the time to decide that and really try and figure out that would work. But that would be a neat opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Newsma. So you said you anticipate, I'm very concerned about management on site. So you anticipate or you will? Can we get some more? I'm looking for firmer words in terms of on-site management here. Are you assuring us you will have it, or there will be one central that'll be moved around?
As I've said, we would have a unit that would be in the building that would not be an income required unit, so it would be a person staffed by HODC. And then separately, a property manager would work primarily out of this office for all of our Evanston buildings. So those are two separate pieces.
So you'd have, I'm sorry, I'm not quite, so the unit that you would take off the LIHTC credit rolls, that would be for a manager? Several managers? It'd be an office.
It'd be for a staff person.
It'd be an office space.
No, it'd be a unit.
But then I would take it you'd have several people then, because you can't have one person on 24/7.
Right. It would be a person that would be their apartment. They would actively live in that apartment, in that building.
So they'd be 24/7 managing that building?
No, they would be a staff person who lives there. And separately, there would be a property manager in charge of all the management aspects of the building, making sure that the leases are signed, that tenants are lease compliant. That person who would operate out of HODC's office would have this as their central office, but also managing the other buildings in Evanston, again, with lease compliance and all the other issues involved with leasing and renting up those units. So having the ability to have multiple touches, making sure that there are multiple people involved. So having somebody who lives there as their unit, but also having a person who is the property manager who's there as their main office, sort of during normal office hours.
So it'd be like a maintenance person, I think, in the room, because you couldn't possibly have someone managing it 24/7. So like a maintenance. I mean, I just want to know like qualifications.
Yes.
Like, it's not
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
resident
yes,
that
yeah.
you're paying some money to say, hey, we're going to mark you down as you're going to live here. We're going
Correct.
to pay.
Correct. Their duties would involve things like maintenance and doing lockouts and fixing things and
Right,
helping
okay.
keep up the building.
And then would you have a desk downstairs at the front?
No, there's not a front desk.
No front desk.
No, it's just an independent apartment building. People come and
no.
go. They have their unit. They get access to the
I can
building.
think
and
of the
access
question,
to
is
the
there
unit.
an office space though for the property
But
manager?
there would be a property manager office.
Separate from the other unit, and that would be on the ground floor?
It would be on the first floor.
On the first,
So on each floor on the building, so the first floor where you come in, it's just the entry lobby, and then the retail space on either side of that, and then you get to the elevator and you go up. And when you go up, each floor has a common space, and on one floor, that space is going to be the office. On another floor, that's going to be the laundry, and on the third floor, it would be the community room.
so that management office space would be up up one floor? Is that
Correct.
what I'm understanding? Not down at the entranceway?
Correct. It would
Okay,
be an
that
entrance
concerns
area.
me somewhat. I know it. The other locale, I'd really like to have at least somebody right now in the lobby at a desk. I think would help tremendously with the well-being of our residents there. So I want to ensure that going forward, that we, operate with best practice possible. I also have, so that I would like to see that if we, could get that, someone up on the second floor. I think it would be improved if we had somebody on the ground floor, more present.
The second floor, did you say first floor? I'm sorry, just for a point of clarification.
Correct. It would be up a floor. On the first floor is just the lobby and elevators in and out of the building from that lobby area.
And then in terms of you said you applied for this ability to put Evanston residents, prioritize Evanston residents. How long does that take before you get a response as to whether or not you'd be permitted to prioritize Evanston residents? And do you have can you reference another building that you have where this is currently done?
We don't know what the time frame is because it's not done typically. We don't have another building where that's the policy. This specifically because of the needs of, as Councilmember Burns mentioned, it specifically asked us to do that. And of course, we're happy to do that, but we don't have other buildings. It's out of our control. It's up to the state to decide. But as part of the process of going forward, they would have to make that decision.
Right,
one
so
way
there's
or
a good
the
chance
other.
that may not
I
hold
don't know
water.
if it's a good or a bad chance.
That may not happen at all.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't
Sorry,
put
just-
a qualifier on it like that.
Director Flax would like to can respond to your
Okay.
last question. Yeah.
We were able to get a local preference for the scattered site portion of the neighborhood stabilization program. And that preference included people who lived or worked in Evanston. And that was allowed. Tax credit projects have different people involved and different requirements. And so I'm not aware of one where that has been done with a tax credit project. That doesn't mean it can't be done. One of the things we have successfully done working with developers is we establish what we call interested parties list. In other words, people contact the city, we put them on a list. People who find out about the project are in the city first because that's where people hear that it's being built. We then can provide that list to the developer, and if they do rank order of people going through, it generally gives quite a strong Evanston presence. That's a preference. That is, in essence, what we did with the Emerson Square, and it is also what we did with the Ann Rainey Apartments.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, what is the time in terms of the affordability? How many years?
A minimum of 30 years.
So 30. And have we considered making these in perpetuity affordable? Councilmember Burns, has that been anything that you've looked into?
I think that 30 years is that a HUD or IDA requirement?
Yeah, that's a requirement of the financing.
And then once that rolls off, whether or not it stays affordable, to me, is really dependent on the mission of the owners.
Well, it's the mission
So
of the
I've
council.
always-
It's the mission of the council.
No,
So-
you got, just give me a moment. Give me a moment. And so I always use Brenshaw as an example. Brenshaw, private developer, right, different mission. Once those properties, let's take the scattered site properties, because that was just mentioned. But once that affordability restriction expires, you know, they plan to sell the properties, right? Their mission is not necessarily to continue to have affordable housing in those scattered site, at the scattered sites. And so part of the scope of a working group I put together called the Here to Stay Committee is to try to renegotiate those affordability restrictions, or when in the situation with Brenshaw, now we have to figure out, identify another partner before those units are sold and potentially put back up to market rate. And so we will lose 50 or so scattered site affordable housing units across the city. I think here what Richard has said is, again, the mission is different. They're a non-for-profit. Somebody mentioned in the crowd there's an LSC involved. There is a for-profit involved for good reason. This site will actually, we'll be able to put this back on the tax rolls, because there's a church now that owns the church owns their property, and then the lot next to it, which is where we plan to have a HODC. So it's actually a good thing that there's an LLC or whatever the way it's structured, but a for-profit organization specifically to own the building, because they're going to pay property taxes. So now we're putting a building back on the tax rolls. But I think it's the mission. I think it's the reason why you see cities in particular partner with affordable housing developers, your SEPAs, your HODCs, your REBA, because their mission is to provide affordable housing in perpetuity. If we were to partner with a private developer, we couldn't make that same statement.
Thank you, Councilmember Burns. So I just want to also respond. Well, for one thing, when there's a variance, just for the record, we can ask for whatever we want. And so when you say it's their mission, that's fine. But if we want this to be, because they're asking for a variance, we have a right to say we want a certain percent of units to be affordable in perpetuity because of their variances. So that's true. So that's when I say it's the mission of the council also. When we're looking at planned developments, we can say we want, one half of those to remain forever affordable. That can be something that we can say when we approve planned development. So just to be clear on that, it's not entirely just up to the developer. It is if it's within right, then yes, but not when they're asking for a planned development. And I also want to respond, Councilmember Burns, with all due respect. You talk about double talk here. I think people here, and I am also, feel very strongly that low-income folks also have a right to live in neighborhoods of quality, of dignified neighborhoods with green space and buildings that aren't packed, that are reasonable, that are beautiful architecture, that work well with the neighborhood. And I think that's what people are coming out against. They're not coming out against affordable units. They're coming out against the way this is being presented, about having it in small, neighborhoods with front porches and everything that everybody loves. Like, that's something I think that we all want to see for low income and even middle income at this point in Evanston. It's becoming so expensive. So I think that's what folks are concerned about, not about having low income neighbors, but the way this is being done. So I just want to set that record straight.
If you can let me respond, since you addressed me, I think this is a dignified area to live in. The Fifth Ward, I said earlier, benefits already from a lot of green space, both along the canal, but also Mason Park, again, which is right near the site. And I think by adding retail back, we provide another amenity. I would love to see retail there and not necessarily a nonprofit use. I think we can find a better place for that in Family Focus, who is, that site is currently underutilized. And so once they renovate their space, maybe if we do continue to have non-for-profits interested in serving the community and need space, I think that's a better fit for it. Part of the reason why, even just for me to get behind this early on, is one of the conditions I had was ground floor retail. I believe in walkable communities. We want to make sure that things that people need are in close walking distance to where they are, and I think we'll be able to advance that goal through the ground floor retail that this will bring back. And the other thing, I just want to be clear that the request for a local priority was not one that was imposed on me or the city by the community or anyone else. That was another condition that I told Richard very early on, that there needs to be a local priority here. I grew up in Evanston. I understand the criticisms that Emerson Square got. that it moved in, that there were a lot of people from Chicago who benefited from that project. Some would say, if you provide affordable housing, no matter who it serves, that's a value to the community. I've always taken the firm position, especially as somebody who grew up in Evanston, that have had friends move out of Evanston because of the high cost of living, is that there needs to be an affordable local priority on this project. And HUD does mention local preferences, and this is the way to get approval on it, right? It's to submit to HUD that we be allowed to do it. There's some precedent before with the scattered site housing, as Sarah said. So this is the way we can work towards this, is to make the request. And we made that request, months ago. Again, that was like, okay, I need to see ground floor retail. I need to see local priority. Richard was like, yes, and okay, let's bring it to the community, so.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Burns. Okay, so I guess we'll start moving forward. I am going to ask for a hold on this. I can tell from the sentiment up here that I probably won't get a second, but nevertheless, I would like to see this held until the Preservation Commission can weigh in and give us some guidance so that we can make a better informed decision. And of course, I think we absolutely shouldn't vote on this until we've seen the new plan. I think it's disrespectful to the community to have this is a new building, to say that we're just going to vote on, okay, sure, lower it, we'll go with that. That just doesn't seem right at all. By my standards, I certainly can't do that. So I would like to see it held for some opinion and guidance from the Preservation Commission. I'd like to see the new schematic, or at least a general plan for this, so I can see it as it lines up on the street, so I can make a better informed decision. I'd also like to see have a discussion at some point on our affordable housing and CMAPs and understand about the clustering of affordable housing and where we really do need to look at placing more affordable housing in response to resident concerns. So I would like to move to hold it until we can see the plan. I can't move forward voting on this without seeing a plan. That is a significant change. This is a different building. And I'd also like to hear from the Preservation Commission. Is there a second?
Point of information, Chair Kelly, a hold is not appropriate at committee. We can only table.
Okay, then a table. Then I'd like to have this tabled until we can get feedback from the Preservation Commission and look and see the plan that we're voting on. So
before this is finalized, we're going to have opportunities for to see the revised plans. This is it's exactly the same. It's a smaller building. Parking is not changing. It's just being reduced. And so we'll have that opportunity to review those changes before this is finalized. And I don't see any reason to table this or hold this at this point.
So, okay. So there's, okay. So we'll take a vote now.
Yeah, I can make that amendment if so I'd like to amend this to instead of the 44-unit building, we'd like a 33-unit building on Church and Darrow for Mount Pisgah. Chair.
Sorry, order in the chambers.
Hold on. And list it out again. Yeah, so this will go from a 57 feet in terms of the height to 47 feet. There'll be 12 one-bedrooms, 10 two-bedrooms, and 11 three-bedrooms provided. So I'll make that amendment.
Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment. Is that what we're doing?
I think that's in order, right? I think that's in order, yeah. Yes.
So you're moving an amendment, and Councilmember Nguyen, you've seconded Councilmember Burns' amendment. Okay. Sarah, do you want to?
Roll call.
There was not a second for the table, so we're now voting on the amendment. Please, Madam Chair, call the vote. Call the vote.
Councilmember Wynn? Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel?
Aye.
Councilmember Karkaris?
Aye.
So we'll now, okay, so the
And then
amendment passes?
Councilmember Burns, you also had that other language that you read earlier about,
Yes.
yeah, that.
Sure. Mr. Smith? Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm ready.
Sorry, we have a comment. from
Chair,
the-
please, come on,
Sorry,
Chair.
no, it's
Come
okay.
on,
I'd like to
Chair.
hear from the residents.
You've been allowing them to speak the entire time. I think we have
I know,
heard
well,
from
the
them.
org chart there at the top. Yeah.
My name is Todd Smith. I have a question for Richard. Richard, you're going to rent to Section 8, correct? Are you going to allow Section 8 in your building, correct? Is that a yes or no?
So will you be, the question is, will you be renting to Section 8 voucher holders? Is that the question? Okay, I think that's
the question.
a question whether he will be providing units to Section 8.
Right.
Yeah, good question. Thank you.
We will not discriminate based on source of income, so if people have Section 8, we would not exclude them. But the nice thing about having affordable rents is that you don't need to have Section 8 in order to be able to afford the rent like you do in a market rate building. So it is possible.
But will you market to fair market value with the rentals? Because I spoke to
Right.
Section 8 today, and they say they have a fixed prices for 2 and 3 bedrooms.
I understand.
He's talking other prices. They say they will not accept other prices. How will you handle that? So,
How would you encourage Section 8? Because we do have an issue. We do have some small landlords here who do rent to Section 8, but we do need more
We
Section 8.
have the rents that you see in the packet, that's the rents that we're charging.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nice thing about having those rents that are below what's otherwise out there on the market is that a household that has a moderate income doesn't need to have Section 8 in order to be able to afford that rent. That's the reason that we have the rents at those low levels. If a household has a Section 8 voucher, we wouldn't discriminate against them and tell them that they were not eligible to live there simply based on having that Section 8 voucher.
Right, but the pricing, and I know this always gets a little bit confusing, but depending on the pricing, either Section 8 is eligible or not. You don't discriminate, you can't legally, but based on the rents, it precludes Section 8 vouchers, people holding those from living there.
That's if the rents are too high, if they're above the standards that the Section 8, the Housing Authority allows. If the rent is too high, they would then preclude them. Ours are too low, so it's different problem.
and what I'm saying is they will not go for, they have standard prices for 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. They will not lower those based off their areas. So they will,
Emerson Square is another good example on this. That's also LIHTC funded, affordably priced, and there are certainly voucher holders within that property. So, Chair, if we can,
Yeah,
I mean, Director
this is a really important
Flax, I think-
discussion, though, the Section 8 vouchers,
Well,
because we do.
allow Director Flax to respond to it, and then we can move forward.
Okay, I'm
with
the chair, Councilmember Burns.
Point, Chair, they're going to give full price to it from Section 8. So if it's $1,700, they're not going to get their 1,000 or 1,100. They're going to
Right.
get 1,700, right? So
Correct.
It's double,
Right.
right?
Right,
It's not.
understood,
It's
thank you.
absolutely not. Director Flax,
Yes.
please respond to this.
By not sending this back to Land Use Committee, the
Chair.
public does not allow to speak on the project of the significant changes. Alderman, too, you cannot deny the public for speaking on a significant change to this building. This must go back to land use where we can question this developer and what he has made a change. This is wrong, and you all need to go to jail.
Thank you. Ms. Flax, would you
Chair,
like to
please.
respond regarding the Section 8?
When the Housing Authority puts Section 8 tenants into any apartment, they negotiate, or they determine the rent they are willing to pay. It is by zip code. This is an area that's used, what is called the small area rents, and the rental rates for unit sizes are different in every single zip code in Cook County. It is determined by the housing authority and the property manager, assuming that it is not below what their rents would be, has to take it. It is
Hi.
not an issue.
I'm sorry. My name is Delisa. I'm a tenant for HODC. I've been a tenant for 22 years. I live in Skokie, and I live in Skokie. Every year we have to give paperwork of our income. They come around, they clean the building. They have an office downstairs. It's kept clean. They do inspections. If you violate anything on there, they give you, you may have a warning or whatever. I have not had any problems with them. I lived in Evanston first. I was a single mom with a 1-year-old baby. I was on their waiting list for probably a year before I had my son. My name came up. I was living in Evanston on Monroe and Florence, paying $1,100 a month. My name came up. I moved there, and I've been there ever since. I have not had any problems with them. They're very supportive. We had got a grant to move out. HUD had a grant. They moved us out to another unit until they finished renovating our buildings, and it's so much better now. We don't have any problems over there with them.
Thank you.
Chair, please. Chair, please. Chair,
I think,
please.
I do want to say, I think we know how this vote's going to go, so I don't,
If I can just please just address a few more issues.
30 seconds.
Claire,
Okay.
we need.
This is the
it's 8
only
o'clock.
corner where we
to-
need to do some justice to the historic building, that we could have a commercial space, something like let's say a jazz center, something that celebrates
cultural.
the history
Thank
of
you.
the black
Okay.
people that have been segregated. Also, $4 million, I'm sure this lady would like that she came to testify. She could use $90,000 so she can be an owner in her own condo that
Okay,
she
thank
has a
you.
stake.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, okay, so I think we voted on the amendment.
So there's
and now
one other amendment. I'm trying to
Oh.
see how to add your language, Councilmember Bell.
He should just make that.
I don't have, because did you want it to address the water retention concerns?
No.
Yeah, I don't know how to phrase it. I asked Liz
I mean,
for a
Bobby, I
little
think that
support.
you should add that language later when it's at the council.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we can do that too. I'm fine with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Are you okay with that? Okay. We're good. We're good.
Okay,
All right.
Ms. Flax, would you take the roll?
This is on approval of the amended,
It says amended.
as amended. Right.
That's right.
So,
Can we
Councilmember
please,
Wynn.
please?
Aye.
Councilmember Nusma.
Aye.
Councilmember Kelly.
No.
Councilmember Burns.
Aye.
Councilmember Ravel.
Aye.
Councilmember Karkaris.
Aye.
5-1.
So it carries with a vote of 6-1?
And we still have
No,
the
five.
church.
5-1.
5-1.
5-1. We have the church.
Oh, we have the church. Okay. Would somebody like to move?
So I will move to untable the discussion of item P2, which is the church. Claire, you gotta call order in this room.
So did we move in second item?
Seconded, but I'd like order.
Can I please have quiet? Bobby, Councilmember Burns, do you want to address this?
No, I don't have a conflict as it relates to this project, so I'd like to move forward, Chair.
Okay, so let's see, item P2 has been moved and seconded, or no?
Yes, it has.
Okay, it's
Yes.
been moved and seconded. Okay, is there discussion?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. Since we have moved item P3 forward, the HODC property at a lower height than had previously been contemplated, I want to discuss the possibility of reducing the height of the church building as well. If the architects from the church would be willing to speak to that, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. The height of the building currently, as it is at 39 feet the roof, and the parapet's at 44 feet. The typical B2 zoning is 45 feet, so we would meet that in a typical situation. The height comes from multiple components, one being the auditory experience within the worship. So it's a very functional, programmatic element for the acoustic quality of that space. And so having typically in an auditorium, you're going to have a narrow space with a tall ceiling. So that's one of the reasons that the height is what it is. The other element is just from an urban fabric standpoint. This is a corner building, so you typically want the corner building to hold that edge. And so that is just from an urban standpoint, one reason that the height is what it is. Another element is the structure. We're using a long span structure, which is a method to economically construct the space, but it's also a way to build the space quicker. The construction time is reduced by having a prefabricated steel structure. So those are the reasons the height is what it is. We did bring a model that does show the building in the context, and we do feel that the scale of the church fits within the fabric. The building at 1817 is approximately 35 feet. Our building with the roof at 39 and parapet at 44 fits very nicely with buildings already existing within that urban fabric.
Councilmember Newsome, does that?
I think it does. I'd like to review the information in the packet here, but I just am confirming that one of the variances requested is an increase in building height from 2 stories or 30 feet to 3 stories at 44 feet to the parapet, just so I'm understanding what you're asking for.
Yes, so the building for the first 70 feet, if you would say on Church Street, is at that 44, the parapet. So the first 70 feet along Darrow, it's at that height, but then it drops down as it gets closer down to the 30 feet, which is within the current zoning regulations. So it does step back as it goes towards the residential along Darrow.
Is there a visual that you could point us to? I think that would help. Sorry to put you on the spot like that.
No, I have it.
It's probably somewhere in our 1,000-page packet, but it's not jumping out at me.
If you go to page 516.
516.
There's the east elevation there that shows that it does step down, the building does step down.
17, 16, there we go. Oh, something different on this. Okay. So which elevation are we looking at here?
This is the east elevation along Darrow Avenue.
Along Darrow. Okay, so Church Street is to our left.
Correct.
This is the top of the roof of the worship. 39.
Okay. Got it. Step down. Okay, so at the front of the building, the parapet is 44 feet.
Yes, but then it steps back down to 30 feet.
Got it. Okay, so what we see there is 44.
This is 44. This is open. This is 39.
Okay.
And
This is actually.
And this building is so designated in that zone is considered an iconic building. So we would imagine that an iconic building within the urban fabric should have more presence than the other buildings along that avenue. So that is coming directly from the zoning code.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have an image there with the other, in conjunction with the other buildings?
Sorry.
With the other building that we just discussed, do you have an image of the church alongside the proposed affordable
Yes.
housing?
Yeah.
We
on page 526. Also on 538.
But wait, can you go back?
It's a perspective distortion.
Yeah, can we get an accurate perspective?
I'm looking on page 545.
This is a comprehensive perspective. So in order to create the vertical as vertical, not the three-point perspective as usually you get from your camera. So in order to do that, there's going to be a distortion. That's the reason why we bring model. And if you look at this one, you even can move this one right next to the 1817, and you can see how significant or insignificant about the height of the building.
Okay, and Councilmember Burns, so your amended proposal will run flush or just a little bit under or over? Oh, he's not here. Councilmember Burns, I was just asking for the newly amended building, which we can't see how.
47 feet.
So it's going to be just a little bit over. Now, do we think that's aesthetically going to work architecturally? I mean, I really can't believe we're going to vote on this without seeing the plan for the other building. So it's going to be slightly higher, 3 feet higher? Not flush?
You said it's 45 now?
44.
44, yeah. 3 feet.
Okay. Any other discussion? With that, I guess we will go ahead and take a vote. Councilmember Nguyen? Aye. Councilmember Nusma?
Aye.
I'll vote no. Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Revelle?
Aye.
Councilmember Heracariz?
Aye.
Okay, with a vote of 5-1, it passes. And I think, we have another one?
No, that's it, right?
I think that's it.
Okay.
I believe that concludes our meeting of planning and development. And city council will start at, should we say 8:30 or? In 5 minutes, okay. We'll start at 8:20, city council. Thank you.